My wife told me she was pregnant, but we hadn't touched each other in 3 months. My name is Jake Miller, 35, shift supervisor at a fabrication plant outside Dallas, most nights anyway. I clock in before sunrise, clock out smelling like oil and steel. My wife Emily used to meet me at the door. Lately it's been headaches, late nights, and the guest room. I'm not a jealous man. I'm a checklist and lunchbox kind of man. But when a truth doesn't add up, I measure it like a crooked beam. The math here was brutal. 3 months of distance, one sudden miracle. No fingerprints that belonged to me. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But a feeling settled in my gut like a bad weld. Hidden, dangerous, guaranteed to fail under pressure. So I took a breath, set my jaw, and decided on the only thing a man can do when his house starts creaking. Check every bolt. I used to come home to the smell of garlic in the pan and a game humming on the TV. Dallas heat on my shoulders, steel dust on my sleeves, Emily smiling like a porch light. Lately the house felt quiet in a way that wasn't peace. Dinner went cold more often. The porch light was on, but the door stayed half closed. She said she was tired, then stressed, then swamped. I washed my hands, set 2 plates, tried small talk about the line going down at the plant. She nodded at the right spots and stared through me. On Fridays we used to split a beer and listen to the Rangers on the radio. Now she took a shower and disappeared to scroll in the bedroom. One night I heard the guest room door click. A soft, careful sound. Not angry, calculated. I stood in the hallway holding 2 plates and a silence. That was the night I realized distance can move in without knocking. The first time she said, "I have a headache," I brought water and turned off the lamp. The second time I offered tea and a neck rub. The third, a cold pack in space. Weeks stacked up like unpaid bills. She started sleeping edge of mattress, then edge of house. I'm not a man who begs, I'm a man who fixes things. I read articles about stress. I tried earlier dinners, weekend drives, even blocking off a Saturday to do nothing but laugh. She picked at the corners of her phone case and said, "Maybe next week." In the mirror, we looked like actors learning the wrong lines. I bought concert tickets, her favorite 90s band, figuring nostalgia might loosen the knot. She wasn't feeling it. That night I sat in the truck and let the radio play to static. Older men tell you marriage is seasons. They don't tell you winter can arrive in July. When I finally went inside, the bedroom door was locked. I keep a mental toolbox. First apartment, cheap couch, laughing on the floor, Sunday pancakes, that blue dress she wore the day we signed for the house, road trips to the hill country with the windows down. I remember her hand fitting in mine like a promise. I remember how she'd tug my sleeve when I was too serious, how she'd say, "Come on, Jake, life's not a shift to supervise." The memories didn't hurt at first, they just glowed. Lately they burned. I cooked her favorite chili one Tuesday and set the table like we used to. She sat, smiled thin, and ate 5 small bites. "This is great," she said, already standing. I watched her leave the room and felt the ache you get when a good board splits under pressure. Men my age know the sound. Wood, bone, heart, it's all the same. I rinsed the bowls, stared at the sink, and told myself love is work. But work needs a partner. Emily started coming home late. Always one more meeting, traffic. Had to help at the front desk. I've worked enough overtime to smell it when it's real. This wasn't it. Her clothes changed too. Sleeker, newer, nothing like a receptionist's paycheck. Twice I hugged her at the door and caught a cologne that wasn't mine, wasn't ours, wasn't in our bathroom cabinet. I asked what it was. She said the elevator was down and everyone packed the same rideshare. I wanted to believe it, so I tried. The next night I found a receipt for a salon blowout tucked in a purse I'd never seen. "My friend gave me a gift card," she said, too quick. Hope is a stubborn muscle. It lifts even when it should rest. I went to wipe the counter and saw she'd set her work badge on top of a weekend movie stub. Saturday overtime apparently now came with previews. My stomach tightened. Patterns were forming where trust used to live. Small things started blinking red. Her phone, always face down. The do not disturb moon glued to the top bar. Location sharing turned off because her battery was draining. A new 6-digit lock code she entered with her body curled away from me. Calendar events labeled hold. Bags left in the trunk, wine left untouched, a new habit of keeping the shower running while the bathroom fan roared, cover noise for whispers or just steam for hiding. Men my age learn to read houses like we read engines. You hear a rattle. You don't rip it apart. You listen. You note. I bought a pocket notebook and started writing dates, times, excuses. Not to punish, just to see the shape of the story. Tuesday, late meeting. Thursday, migraine. Saturday, helping a friend move, yet her gym shoes stayed clean. I told myself I was overreacting. Then I opened the nightstand for chapstick and found a second phone charger we never bought. One night she came in carrying that cologne again. I asked casually, "Long day?" She said, "Elevator's busted. Had to ride share with David from the warehouse." I nodded, filed it away, and went to the sink. Summit Energy doesn't have a warehouse. I know because I've dropped off her lunch there and walked through the whole building. Reception, accounting, a break room with a broken vending machine, no loading dock, no forklifts. I waited until morning and called the main line from my truck. "Can I speak to David in the warehouse?" The operator laughed like I told a joke. "We don't have a warehouse, sir." I hung up and stared at the steering wheel until the leather warmed under my hands. That was the first lie I could prove with a phone call and a memory. Not a hunch, not a feeling, a fact. It didn't make me angry. It made me alert. When truth steps out of the room, a man starts checking for exits. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the warranty on our dishwasher because it was making a grind I couldn't place. The folder lived in the hallway cabinet, third shelf, behind the tax returns. The paper was tucked where no one tucks a warranty, behind our insurance forms, folded into a tight square. I recognized the logo before I opened it. Planned Parenthood, Dallas. The date was 6 weeks ago. The words were clinical, the handwriting small, pregnancy test and consultation. Positive. My hands went cold in a way the Texas heat couldn't touch. I sat on the edge of the bed and held that paper like it might scream. 6 weeks. The same window when the guest room became her room. The same month the cologne appeared. I put the receipt back exactly how I found it. Then I closed the cabinet and the door and my mouth. When something this big lands on your table, you don't flip it. You measure it. I replayed the last time we were close, the week the AC died and we slept with the fan roaring like a boxy hurricane. Before the headaches, before the locked doors. 3 months. That number isn't an opinion. It's a calendar. The clues lined up like nails, the queasiness at 6 a.m. The hand guarding her belly when she turned, the sudden refusal of Cabernet on date night, the careful way she buckled her seatbelt. She laughed when I asked if she wanted coffee and reached for ginger tea instead. I held the memory of her face that night, soft, distracted, lit by a screen. And I did the arithmetic every man dreads. 3 months of no touch. 6 weeks of pregnancy. I wanted the numbers to argue back. They didn't. My father taught me to count twice and cut once. I counted a third time. The sum didn't change. Something in me shifted from hurt to clarity. A clean, cold line. The kind you cut along. I didn't confront her. Not then. Rage is loud and sloppy. Truth is patient. I folded that patience like a drop cloth over everything I felt and decided to move like a carpenter. Measure, mark, then make one clean cut. At breakfast I asked about her day and kissed her forehead like always. She said she might have to work late and watched my eyes to see if I flinched. I didn't. I packed my lunch, clocked in, and let the rhythm of machines steady my hands. On my break I made a list. Attorney, investigator, lab. Not because I wanted a fight, but because paper beats stories. On the drive home, I passed the church where we said our vows. I didn't look away. When I walked in, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and something unsaid. She asked if I wanted to watch a show. I said sure and sat beside her. If she was playing a part, so was I. The curtain had just gone up. I started small, a notebook in my back pocket, dates and times in neat block letters. When she came home, when she didn't. How long the shower ran. Which nights the guest room door clicked. I tracked the coffee level in the bag, how often she reached for ginger tea instead. I noted the new habit of dropping keys in a different bowl, like muscle memory had moved houses. Older guys at the plant keep ledgers for everything. Oil changes, kids' birthdays, deer season. This was the same tool, pointed at my own front door. I wasn't hunting a person. I was hunting a pattern. Tuesday. Late meeting. Thursday. Migraine. Saturday, help a friend move. Sunday morning, she laughed too hard at nothing. Sunday night, she slept like a stone. I circled the days she was sweet and drew arrows to the ones she was distant. Halfway down the page, a line kept repeating, her right hand resting on her stomach when she thought I wasn't looking. I underlined it twice. You can fake a smile. You can't fake reflex. Emily stopped reaching for the Cabernet and started asking for water with lemon. We'd sit at our favorite burger place and she'd hold the menu like a shield. No blue cheese, she'd say, voice light, eyes tight. I offered her a sip of my beer out of habit. She waved it off with a joke and a glance at the clock. In the truck, I watched her buckle up and thread the strap carefully under her belly, like the webbing might bruise a secret. At the grocery store, she paused by the prenatal vitamins and then kept walking. Little alarms. Quiet ones. On a Tuesday morning, I set a travel mug in her hand. Coffee? She smiled, then moved my hand gently away. Ginger tea, she said, softer than usual. That night she stood half-lit in the bathroom mirror, palm pressed flat against her shirt. She didn't see me in the doorway. Reflex told the story her words wouldn't. I made eggs and toast on a quiet Saturday and set 2 plates like peace offerings. She sat, tucked hair behind her ear, checked her phone. I took a breath and laid the line like a carpenter sets a chalk snap. Maybe we should stop waiting and start trying for a baby. The fork froze halfway up. It wasn't shock, it was calculation. Now? She said, smiling too quickly. Work is crazy. My boss hinted at a promotion. I sipped coffee, steady. We're not getting younger. She folded her napkin once, then again, buying time. 6 months, she said. Maybe a year. The number came out too smooth, like a line rehearsed in a bathroom. The room went still in that way kitchens do before storms. I nodded, thanked her for being honest, and let the quiet stretch. Her appetite disappeared. Mine did too. When I cleared the plates, both were heavy and untouched. The test was done. Her answer wasn't words. It was fear. I've spent 2 decades checking machines that claim they're fine. You look for the rattle behind the hum. Monday at lunch, I sat in my truck and called Summit Energy's main line. I'm following up on a shipment for Mr. Johnson in management, I said. A pause. We don't have a Mr. Johnson, the operator said, bored and certain. After work, I drove past the office park, took a slow loop, and watched people spill out at 5:30. Same faces, no late meetings, no warehouse, no hard hats. I parked in the lot across the street and studied the glass. Reception, accounting, a conference room with a dead ficus, a break room with the same broken vending machine I'd seen before, regular office life. Nothing that explained her new hours or new dresses. I wrote the answer in my notebook like a diagnosis. Promotion story. Fiction. I turned the key, felt the engine settle, and stared through the windshield until the sky went from orange to black. The lie wasn't small anymore. I made an appointment and walked into an office that smelled like paper and peppermint. The sign on the door read, Patricia Hoffman, Family Law, mid-50s, gray hair pulled back, diplomas on the wall, a box of tissues set within easy reach. She listened without tapping a pen, which is rarer than you think. Do you want to save this? She asked, or do you want the truth? I looked at the framed certificate, then at my hands. Truth first, I said. Always truth first. She nodded like I'd passed a test she'd seen 100 men take and fail. Here's what we're going to do, she said, calm and practiced. You'll gather facts. You'll stay polite. You will not tip your hand. And when the time comes, we'll move. She slid a stack of cards across the desk. Investigator, lab, her direct line. Paper beats stories, she said. I put her card in my wallet like it was a socket wrench, something I'd need soon. Patricia talked timing, not theater. If she's 6 weeks, she said, non-invasive prenatal paternity is possible around 9. You'll need her blood and your swab. If she refuses, you wait for the birth. As her husband, you have rights to request testing. Don't argue. Document. She had the steady tone of a nurse during a storm. Keep copies, dates, screenshots. If you ask questions, ask small ones. When you confront, do it once, cleanly, with proof. She tapped the desk. And don't break the law trying to catch a lie. Judges like calm men with paper, not angry men with stories. I thought about my father's advice. Measure twice, cut once. Patricia smiled when I said it out loud. Exactly. I stood to leave, lighter than I'd arrived. Not happy, just clear. On the way out, she said, "You'll want a lab you can trust." She underlined a name and number. I slid it into my pocket. It felt like a key. That week, Emily turned sweet. Not the old sweet, the porch light kind. This was careful. She made beef stew from my mother's recipe and set the table with the good plates. She asked about the plant, about the new guy on night shift, about the Rangers bullpen like she suddenly remembered we both liked baseball. In the living room, she sat close enough to count my breaths and kept her phone upside down on the couch cushion. "I love you, Jake," she said, voice warm, timing precise. I said it back, because it was true about the woman I married, even if I couldn't find her in the room. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Her hand, without thinking, drifted to her stomach. I felt the stew settle heavy in my chest. When the show ended, she suggested a weekend away, soon. I smiled and agreed. She wasn't offering a trip. She was offering a script. And I didn't mind reading my lines. Thursday night, she mentioned a sudden plan. "Elena needs me," she said, folding laundry that didn't need folding. "Her marriage is falling apart. I should drive down Saturday, be back Sunday." I nodded slow. "Give Elena my best." Emily has one sister, Megan, in Seattle, married, stable, 2 golden retrievers and a book club. There is no Elena. I kept my face easy. "Take my car," I said. "Better on the highway." She shook her head too fast. "No, I'm fine." I kissed her cheek and set a reminder on my phone for Saturday sunrise. I've driven enough Texas miles to know the rhythm of an I-35 weekend. If she was going to Austin, she'd hit certain exits. If she wasn't, she'd turn early. That night, I lay awake and pictured a map of the city in my head, street names sliding into place like socket sizes in a tray. I wasn't eager. I wasn't angry. I was ready to watch. She left at 8 with a travel mug and a nervous wave. I waited 10 minutes and rolled out, 2 cars back, sunglasses on, cap low. This wasn't TV. It was traffic and patience and knowing when to let a light turn red. She didn't hit the freeway. She cut east through neighborhoods and then north, past a strip mall and a high school with Saturday football banners still hanging. My hands were steady at 10 and 2. She took a right into a quiet subdivision where every yard looked mowed by the same man. No Austin, no sister, just North Dallas suburbia humming through sprinklers. She slowed in front of a single-story ranch with a red pickup in the driveway. I coasted past, turned around at the cul-de-sac, and parked 3 houses down where a magnolia gave me shade and cover. I watched her step out, smooth her dress, and check her hair in the window. She wasn't nervous anymore. She was home. The front door opened, and a man walked out like he'd been listening for her tires. Tall, athletic, 30-something. He moved like a guy who's never learned a hard lesson all the way through. Emily walked straight into his arms. Not a cautious hug, not a quick hello, a kiss that had a history. He rested a hand on her stomach without thinking. She didn't move it away. The sun hit them square and bright, like the world wanted the picture clear. I felt something in me go still, the way a machine goes quiet right before it jams. There it was. Not a story, not a hunch. A scene you could point at. I let my breath out in a slow line and reached for my phone. Anger would have made me stomp across the street and blow it all up. I'm not 25 anymore. I'm a man who keeps his job because he doesn't swing first. I lifted the camera. I took what a judge would understand. Photos with faces, the house number, the red pickup, the license plate framed neat in the screen. I snapped wide, then tight, then wider again for context. Timestamps locked in the corner like little nails. They went inside. I waited, engine off, AC off, sweat settling like a second shirt. An older couple walked a beagle past my bumper. I nodded like any neighbor on any Saturday. After 20 quiet minutes, I circled the block and came back from the other side. The truck hadn't moved. The porch light clicked off. I wrote the plate number in my notebook even though I had it in the photos. Paper beats stories. I added a time, 10:42 a.m. I added a note. Her car, his truck, together. Then I drove to the next street over and sat under another tree, not because I needed more pictures, but because calm men make better decisions. I planned the next move. Public records in Texas are like old fence lines. You can follow them if you know where to look. Appraisal district. The house was in his name. Mortgage late by a few months. County records. One domestic disturbance call last year, another 3 years back. Nothing that made him a monster on paper, just a man who couldn't hold the corners down. Linked profiles showed a contractor's smile and a gap since his last job. Morrison Construction. Laid off 6 weeks ago. I copied what mattered and printed it at the library, the pages warm and thin in my hand. Men my age know the difference between broke and dishonest. Broke is a season, dishonest is a habit. Tyler looked like a man building with borrowed boards. I jotted his name at the top of a new page, Tyler Grant, and underlined it twice. Then I drew a box around one fact: 6 weeks. The same window as that receipt. The same window as the lies. Monday morning, I parked a block away and watched Tyler leave in a clean shirt in a hurry that didn't match the records. He drove to a coffee shop off the University Strip. I followed, went in 2 people behind him, and ordered black coffee I didn't want. He took a corner table and talked low into his phone. I didn't try to hear. I just let the room bring me pieces. She told her husband they might start trying, he said, chuckling. A couple more weeks and she can surprise him. The words came wrapped in steam and espresso and that fake wood tabletop shine. He paused, listened, then said, "No, he doesn't suspect a thing." My coffee went bitter in my mouth. I left it untouched and walked out like a man who forgot his wallet. Outside, I sat in my truck and opened the notebook to a clean page. I wrote the quote down word for word. Some sentences don't need polish. In the quiet of the cab, the plan snapped into focus like a chalk line pulled tight. Emily and Tyler didn't just make a mistake. They made a calendar. She'd hold me off, then gift me the news when the weeks looked right. I'd smile and pour sparkling cider and talk baby names. My name would land on the birth certificate by default, because that's how the law starts. Husband equals father, until someone brings paper. They wanted my paycheck, my insurance, my last name on a crib that wasn't mine. Not for love, for cover. A simple plan, if your opponent is asleep. I am not asleep. I closed my eyes, let the anger move through like a train you don't try to stop, and felt what was under it. Resolve. If they wanted a story, I'd bring a ledger. If they wanted a celebration, I'd bring an envelope. The next steps weren't about pain, they were about proof. That night I came home with flowers from the grocery store and a calm I had to assemble piece by piece. Emily smiled, surprised, the way people do when they think they're winning by a mile. We ate takeout and watched a sitcom. I laughed at all the right spots. When she reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. This wasn't surrender. It was stagecraft. In my head, I laid out the work like a project at the plant. Timeline, materials, tools, lab for testing, investigator for the background I couldn't reach, a separate account with my name only, a file folder for photos and printouts, tabs labeled by date. I set my phone on the table face up and asked about her day. She said, "Busy," and looked relieved when I didn't press. Before bed, I wrote one more line in the notebook. Play along, stay ahead, strike once. Then I turned off the light and slept with the window cracked. The game had started. I hired a private investigator named Robert Kane, late 40s, sunburned knuckles, tie loosened like a man who prefers the truth to a suit. His office sat over a locksmith. The hallway smelled like brass and coffee. I told him what I knew and, more important, what I could prove. He didn't interrupt, just wrote careful notes like a foreman counting rebar. "You want heat or light?" he asked. "Light," I said. "Paper, pictures, patterns." He slid a simple contract across the desk and a retainer that felt like a deductible on a wreck I didn't cause. "Rules are simple," he said. "You stay clean. I get you what a judge respects." He tapped the manila folder. "If there's a story here, we'll stitch it with timestamps." I signed, shook his hand, and stepped into the Texas glare feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind you get when the right tool finally fits the nut. Robert handed me a GPS tracker no bigger than a quarter. "Legal on shared property," he said. "Use it, don't abuse it." Saturday morning, the shower ran and steam curled under the bathroom door. I walked to the garage like I was just after paper towels and slid on my work gloves, the same pair I used to keep skin off the sharp edges at the plant. I knelt by her rear bumper, heart steady, breath small, and snapped the magnet into place behind the wheel well. It clicked like a secret handshake. Back in the kitchen, I wiped a clean counter. My phone buzzed, a single dot on a map pulsing from our driveway. Later, when she left for errands, the dot moved south, then east. I watched in increments. 1 street, 2, then the same turn I'd taken before toward Elm Street. I didn't chase her this time. I didn't have to. The map was the chase. The ping was proof. The dot blinked, and I let it. Patricia's voice stayed in my head. Don't break the law. So I stuck to what was clean. We had a shared laptop, the one we used for bills and holiday cards. I installed a simple activity logger, the kind that records websites and times. Nothing fancy, nothing from a dark corner of the web. Just a receipt for attention. That night, Emily curled up beside me on the couch, phone face down, while a sitcom pretended marriage was simple. After she slept, I opened the laptop. Searches for non-alcoholic celebrations, nausea at night, and best time to announce pregnancy. A calendar tab marked hold on Thursdays with one tiny telling detail: location services off. I took screenshots, printed them in the morning at the plant's office copier before anyone clocked in. Paper beats stories. I slid the pages into a clear sleeve and labeled them by date. If I ever had to lay this out, I wanted a line the average man could trace with his finger. I opened a checking account in my name only and redirected my direct deposit. No drama, just signatures and a calm voice to the HR lady about streamlining finances. Married men my age know, storms pass easier when the roof is tight and the paperwork is dry. I left enough in the joint account for groceries, utilities, the same ordinary life we'd always covered. Then I froze one shared card that had started ringing up work dinners on Saturdays. Emily never asked. She only smiled more on Sundays. I wasn't hiding wealth. I was building a lifeboat. I printed account info, tucked it behind my truck's registration, and pictured the day I might need to hand it to a clerk who doesn't care about tiers, only dates. The point wasn't punishment, it was protection. When you sense a floorboard giving way, you don't stomp to prove it. You shift your weight, spread it out, and plan the safest step forward. The next time the tracker settled at Elm Street, I parked 3 blocks over under a magnolia that dripped leaves like confetti and waited for dark. The subdivision glowed with porch lights and television blues. At 9:12 p.m., the front curtains framed a pair of silhouettes, her head on his shoulder, his hand right where it had been in the driveway. I didn't move closer. I adjusted my phone, raised the ISO, and shot through the frame of my open window. Click. Wide for context. Click. Tight for faces. Click. Car in the drive. License in focus. The night air smelled like cut grass and lies. A sprinkler sputtered to life next door, metal ticking like a metronome. When their shapes disappeared down the hall, I photographed the quiet house itself, the address numbers, the welcome mat, the little crack in the step I'd noticed before. Judges don't care about heartbreak. They care about context. I let the magnolia hide me and kept building it. The next morning I called Robert from the parking lot at work, the plant humming behind me like a giant sleeping animal. Run him, I said. All the way. Employment, finances, any calls to his address, any paper that tells us who he is when the porch light's off. Robert didn't make speeches. You got it. By lunch he'd texted me a starter list, employer separation date, property records, a hint of past trouble I couldn't read yet. I'll have a package by Thursday, he wrote. I stepped back into the shop, the smell of cutting fluid grounding me. There's a rhythm to honest work. Measure, cut, weld, test. I kept my body in that rhythm while my mind laid out a different jig. After shift, I sat in the truck, reviewed the photos, matched them to the GPS log, and labeled a new folder. Elm Street, evenings. I didn't need drama. I needed depth. Go deeper, I had told him. We were. Robert's package hit my porch in a nondescript envelope. Inside, printouts, tabs, and the kind of highlight work that makes you respect a man. Tyler Grant, contractor, yes, but laid off 6 weeks prior. 2 domestic disturbance calls in the last 5 years. 1 complaint dismissed, 1 verbal only. Late mortgage. Back child support to an ex in Waco. Nothing that made him a headline. Enough to sketch a pattern. Men my age know the difference between a bad week and a bad habit. Tyler had a habit of living on promises that came due too late. I slid the pages into my binder and felt the weight shift from suspicion to structure. This wasn't about being better than him. It was about seeing the wall before you hit it. At the bottom, Robert had clipped a photo, Tyler arm in arm with a different woman last fall. Corner note. Overlap? I wrote a single word beside it. Predictable. Then I closed the cover. The picture was clearer. That evening, Emily laid out dinner like a magazine spread. Cloth napkins, candles that smelled like vanilla and new paint. She watched my face like a teacher waiting on the right answer. "I have some good news," she said, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. I kept my breathing even. "Yeah?" She smiled, the kind you practice in a mirror. "Work's stabilizing. Things are looking up." I asked small questions, the kind Patricia trained into me. Who, when, what changed? She stacked vague words like cushions. Soon, possibility, maybe. Then she touched her stomach without awareness and glanced at the fridge calendar, like a pilot checking instruments. I nodded like a man pleased to hear his team finally found its footing. Inside, I felt the click of a gear finding a groove. She wanted to set the stage. I would help her build it, just not for the play she thought we were in. "We should celebrate," I said. "Saturday?" Her eyes lit. Hook set. I called Stefano's Italian Grill, the place with the old red booths and the Sinatra playlist no one has the heart to change. "Corner booth if you can," I asked. "By the window." The hostess laughed. "Anniversary special?" "Something like that." I asked for 7 o'clock, the dinner hour that makes a room full and eyes busy. Then I drove by at lunch and checked sightlines, how a manila envelope would sit on the table, what angle would keep the streetlight reflection off a glossy photo, where a server could stand without blocking the view. It wasn't paranoia, it was carpentry. Measure the scene, mark your cuts. Back home, I cleaned my boots, ironed a shirt she liked, and thought about how many men had sat in those red booths and said things they couldn't unsay. Saturday wasn't going to be a fight. It was going to be a demonstration. If she wanted to tell a story, I'd bring the projector and the screen. I bought a fresh manila envelope and a stack of clear sleeves. On my workbench, under the same lamp I used to fix fishing reels, I built the case. First page, GPS log with dates highlighted. Second, photos wide, then tight, then that driveway kiss under a sky too blue to deny. Third, Tyler's records, employment separation, mortgage delinquency, child support arrears. Fourth, summary notes to my block letters, calm as a parts list. Last, a lab referral card for prenatal paternity testing and a consent form filled out with everything but her signature. I wasn't going to shove it at her. I was going to place it down like a receipt and let silence do the math. I slid each page into a sleeve, tapped the edges square, and wrote her name on the tab. Emily Parker, Saturday. When I tucked it into my jacket, it felt heavier than paper. It felt like the moment before a cut when the saw is lined up true. There were 2 reels running in my head. One was rage, bright, fast, loud. The other was love, quiet clips of backyard sunsets and the way she used to laugh with her whole face. Men in their 30s and 40s learn the hard truth. You can feel 2 opposites at once and still have to choose what your hands do. On my lunch break, I sat in the truck and let both reels play. I pictured the booth, the envelope, the lift of her eyebrows when she realized the lines had flipped. Then I pictured the first night in our house, sitting on the floor eating takeout because the couch was late. Both were true, but only one belonged to the future. I turned off the engine and caught my reflection in the dark screen of the dash. Older than I felt, steadier than I feared. "Clean cut," I said out loud, like a reminder. Not to her, to me. The heart can argue. The hands must work. On Friday night, sleep wouldn't come, so I drove past St. Mark's, the little brick church where we said, for better, for worse, under a ceiling fan that squeaked every third turn. I parked across the street and watched the sanctuary lights glow like a memory does, soft around the edges, stubborn in the middle. I could still hear the pastor's voice and my father's handshake grip when he said, "Proud of you, son." Emily cried during the vows, not big sobs, just those quiet tears that make you believe a promise is heavier than a ring. We took photos on the steps with people we loved and people we don't talk to anymore. Moments like that don't disappear. They just move to a shelf you don't dust. I sat there a while, let the past have its say, and then turned the key. Saturday would not be about breaking vows. It would be about naming the thing that already broke them. Words matter. So does clarity. The next morning, the house told its own story. The porch swing I'd tightened last spring creaked louder. The roses out front needed water I hadn't given. In the kitchen, a chipped coffee mug read, "Best husband." fading like a t-shirt washed too many times. I remembered the first year, when we argued over paint colors and laughed about it before the brush was dry. We planned kids someday, mapped vacations we couldn't afford, and learned each other's grocery lists by heart. Now our shopping cart split down the middle, hers full of new clothes and almond milk, mine with work socks and motor oil. I poured coffee, stood at the window, and thought about every older man who ever told me time doesn't fix everything. Effort does, but only when it's mutual. I set the mug down and picked up my jacket. The difference between then and now wasn't mystery. It was maintenance. One of us had stopped tightening bolts. She came into the kitchen around noon, hair done, that late morning glow people get when they're excited about their night. "I love you, Jake," she said, reaching to straighten a collar that didn't need it. The words landed like a coin on a counter. Sound familiar, worth in question. I looked at her the way you look at an old photo, finding both the person you knew and the pose. "I love you too," I answered, and it was true in the way a man can love the history of a house even as he files the paperwork to sell it. She smiled, relieved, not noticing my hand slide the car keys across the counter like a small test. "I'll drive," I said. "Let me take care of you tonight." She hesitated, a blink, and then agreed. It was nothing on the surface. It was everything underneath. If you've ever tightened a bolt and felt a thread catch, you know the feeling. The plan held. All Saturday, I moved slow on purpose. I mowed the lawn, edged the walk, cleaned the grill, the ordinary rituals that men use to steady a mind. I checked the envelope twice, then stopped checking. I ironed the shirt again, even though it didn't need it. When Emily floated through the rooms humming, I matched her tune and kept my hands busy. Patience isn't passive. It's pressure applied in the right direction at the right time. I texted the reservation reminder to her phone so she'd see certainty on the screen. I'd already confirmed it with the hostess. I set my wallet, keys, and pen in a row on the dresser, habit from years of early shifts. The only thing I added was the envelope. It lay there like a tool rolled in canvas, quiet and ready. At 5:30 I showered, shaved, and watched myself tie a knot clean and centered. "Slow is smooth," I said to the mirror. "Smooth is fast." We left early enough to hit the tail of sunset over the tollway, that orange Texas bleed that makes even traffic look kind. Emily chatted about appetizers and asked if we could order the tiramisu to share like we used to. I nodded, one hand at 12 on the wheel, the other resting on my knee to keep from drumming. The radio played a song from the year we met, and for a mile I let it wash over us like an old trailer for a movie we'd already seen. At a red light she took my hand and squeezed. Her nails were freshly done, pale blue to match the dress hanging from her shoulders like an alibi. "You okay?" she asked. "Best I've felt in weeks," I said, and it wasn't even a lie. I parallel parked a block from Stefano's because the stroll would clear my head and give me a second to breathe. The envelope tapped my ribs with every step. Stefano's glowed like it always does. Red booths, white tablecloths, a waiter who's been 35 for a decade. Emily wore a blue dress that caught the lamplight and made her eyes look like the sky in April. She smoothed it more than it needed, checked the room, and sat across from me with the prim posture of someone about to receive applause. The hostess set down water, menus, and the soft basket of bread that always disappears too fast. Emily didn't touch the wine list. "Sparkling cider for me," she said, and the waiter nodded like he'd seen this scene 100 times. She talked about promotions and new responsibilities, phrases that sounded like stock photos look. Every word widened the gap between what I heard and what I knew. Under the table, her foot tapped. On the table, her hand kept drifting to her midsection, as if her body couldn't stop telling on her. I folded my napkin and let the moment ripen. We ordered our usual, chicken parm for her, lasagna for me. The plates arrived, steam curling like script. Emily set down her fork and took my hand, palm damp. "Jake," she said, voice bright and trembling. "We're having a baby." She waited for the echo, for the fireworks, for the soundtrack that plays in commercials where everyone hugs and a golden retriever barks approval. I let surprise bloom on my face like heat from an oven door. "Are you serious?" I said, leaning in. She nodded fast, smiling too hard, eyes shining with effort. 6 weeks, maybe a little more. Late spring. Right on schedule. I stood, leaned over, and kissed her forehead the way husbands do in pictures. The room blurred for a second. not from sadness, but from the weight of a plan reaching its hinge. "This is the best news," I said, and I meant it differently than she thought. The cut was marked. All that remained was to set the blade. The waiter brought champagne and sparkling cider. Emily lifted her glass, shoulders loosening like a finish line had been crossed. "To our future," she said. I raised mine. "To knowing what's true." The glasses clinked, a small bell in a noisy room. I asked about names, about nursery colors, about the way her mom would cry happy tears. She laughed, relieved, and told a story about baby shoes she'd seen in a store window. I nodded, filing every detail in the drawer where I keep things I won't need. Then I reached into my jacket and felt the cool edge of the envelope. For a heartbeat, I watched the table the way a man watches a board under a saw, flat, steady, ready. I set my glass down, cleared a spot between the salt and the bread plate, and slid the manila across, the flap facing her. "I got you something too," I said, voice level. Her smile paused, still on her face, no longer in her eyes. She touched the flap like it might burn. "What is it?" "Go ahead," I said. The room went soft around us. Forks, laughter, plates, all a little farther away. She pulled out the first page. Our house, her car, the Elm Street address, the timestamp in the corner like a tiny, polite witness. She blinked, flipped. The driveway kiss, the hand on her stomach, the license plate. Flip, Tyler's records. Flip, the lab referral. Her breathing changed first, short, shallow pulls like someone stepping into cold water. "I can explain," she whispered, voice small, edges fraying. I let her stack the evidence back into the envelope with shaking hands. "Explain how you're pregnant when we haven't touched in 3 months," I said, calm as a blueprint. Silence spread across the tablecloth like a spill. In the window's reflection, I watched us, the man who brought paper, the woman who brought a story. The waiter stepped toward us, thought better of it, and turned. The cut was clean. Her fingers shook so hard the paper clicked against the plate. Candle wax wavered, and the room's hum pulled back like the ocean before a wave. She read with her lips, not her voice, house number, timestamps, dates she thought were safely buried under late meetings. Her wedding band ticked the table when it slipped on her knuckle, a tiny metronome counting down. "Jake," she tried, but the word arrived without a sentence to carry it. She looked up once, hunting for the version of me who'd nod and fix things. I kept my face steady, the way you do when a level bubble finds center. She flipped to Tyler's file, then back to the photograph of their driveway kiss, as if rearranging pages could rearrange reality. Across the aisle, a couple laughed too loud. Our table didn't move. Older men will tell you, there's a kind of quiet that only shows up when truth sits down. It was in her eyes now, and it was heavy. She tried angles first. "It's not what it looks like." I slid the photo an inch closer. "We were just talking." I pointed to the timestamp and the hand on her stomach. "He's going through a hard time." I tilted the printout that showed his mortgage 3 months late. I was helping. I tapped the domestic disturbance call. Paper doesn't blink, it doesn't forget, and it doesn't get tired. She gathered the pages like she could warm them into kindness, but the ink stayed cold. "This is invasion, Jake." I shook my head once. "This is evidence." I wasn't cruel. I was precise. There's a difference. Her breath came choppy, the way a car coughs before it dies. She picked up the lab authorization and stared at the blank line where her signature belonged. For a second I saw the woman I married, scared, small, lost. Then the mask slid back into place. "We can talk at home," she said. "We are talking," I answered. "Right here." I set my elbows off the cloth so the waiter wouldn't have to steam a stain tomorrow. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "Explain how you're pregnant when we haven't touched in 3 months." I said it evenly, like a foreman reading a spec. No hiss, no heat, just the truth shaped into a sentence. She blinked, opened, closed, like a porch light on a bad sensor. "We were trying," she said too quickly. "We were planning." I let the silence do its slow work. "Late spring," I added, "right on schedule." The clock over the bar ticked 3 times. Somewhere, plates clinked and a kid laughed. Our table might as well have been an island. She reached for the envelope again and knocked her water. The ice slid toward her, then stopped at the dam of her palm. "Don't do this here," she whispered. I folded my napkin and set it down. You brought the celebration here, I said. I brought the truth. She stood so fast the chair legs barked against tile. The waiter took a step, then froze, learning the oldest rule in hospitality: let the storm pass the doorway. I followed at a distance, not to chase, just to witness. Outside, Dallas evening air wrapped around us, warm and indifferent. She pushed through to the curb and folded at the bumper like the breath had been punched out of her. Tears came in hard, ugly sobs, the kind you don't fake because they don't help. I stayed 2 paces back, hands loose, jaw set. I've seen machines fail, belts snap, bearings seize. The first seconds are always noise and smoke. You don't reach into the gears, you kill the power and wait. She looked up, mascara crooked, and found me standing quiet. Please, she said, not finishing the plea. A group laughed by the patio heaters. Traffic rolled. The world kept its rhythm. We were the only ones off beat, and maybe that was the clearest thing yet. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand like a kid who fell off a bike. I thought you'd never know, she said. 5 words that tried to sound like apology and landed as confession. Streetlight pooled at our feet. I could see our shoes, side by side, not touching. You built a plan, I answered. You timed it. She shook her head too hard, as if velocity could undo intent. It just happened. I almost laughed at just. Nothing about calendars is just. I didn't want to lose you, she said, and there it was, the real math. Keep the husband, keep the paycheck, keep the picture on the mantle. Older men warn you, some folks love the frame more than the photo. We can fix it, she whispered. Therapy, church, a reset. I thought of the envelope in my jacket, of Patricia's card, of a line you draw once and never cross again. We can be civil, I said. We cannot be married. Her chin rose a fraction. Anger found a rung. You think you're so clever, she snapped, as if the insult might knock me off balance. I nodded once. I think I'm not stupid. The words weren't a victory shout. They were a boundary, set like a fence post you drop in concrete. You spied, she said. I documented, I answered. You stalked. I followed patterns. Older guys know this dance, the flailing, the reframing, the Hail Mary accusation. It means the facts have landed. She took a step closer, heat back in her cheeks. Tyler said. She caught herself, bit the name. I didn't make her finish. He said I wouldn't know, I filled in. He was wrong. A car idled at the curb, exhaust ghosting past. I pointed to the envelope under my arm. This isn't a fight I want to win, I said. It's a record I refuse to ignore. She looked past me toward the door like there might be a different ending inside. There wasn't. I pulled out my phone and opened a contact I'd saved weeks ago under P. Patricia answered on the second ring, voice steady as ever. Is this the moment? She asked. Yes, ma'am, I said, eyes on Emily so she knew this wasn't theater. Email incoming, Patricia replied. We'll file first thing Monday. Tonight, go home. Be calm. Don't engage. She gave me a short list. Change the lock code, secure documents, inventory valuables, sleep with your phone charged. Practicalities that feel like lifelines when the boat tilts. I hung up and texted Robert one line. Package received. Stand by. Then I looked at Emily. We'll handle this like adults, I said. No screaming, no breaking. Paper, not stories. She nodded in a way that meant no and yes at the same time. I offered to call a ride. She shook her head and walked away, shoulders square, pace too quick to be strong. I watched her turn the corner and exhaled. The pivot was done. Monday morning smelled like coffee and copy toner. Patricia slid a neat stack across her desk. Petition, temporary orders, a checklist that turned chaos into steps. We'll request exclusive use of the house for now, she said, tapping boxes. We'll set boundaries on contact. We'll preserve assets. Calm wins. I initialed lines, signed where tabs told me to, and listened for anything that sounded like revenge. There wasn't any. Only protection and procedure. About the pregnancy, she said, gentler. We'll file to compel testing once it's medically appropriate. Until then, no statements on paternity. Facts, not guesses. I nodded. The pen felt heavier than a wrench. You okay? She asked. I thought of Saturday night, of curbside truth, of how grief and relief can share a cup. "I'm working," I said. She smiled at that choice of word. Outside, the sun hit the hood of my truck and turned the dust to glitter. Paper had started to move. Not fast, straight. By Wednesday, she'd packed the guest room into her car, clothes, toiletries, the framed photo from our trip to the hill country. She left the kitchen mixer and the wedding china. She took the blanket her mother knit and the blue dress in a dry cleaning bag. "I'll be at a friend's," she said. I didn't ask which friend. The lock code was changed that evening. The spare key under the frog statue found a new home in a drawer she no longer opened. Tyler called once from a number I didn't know. "Man to man," he began. I ended it with a thumb press and added the number to a list labeled "No." Older men will tell you, sometimes dignity is a hang-up tone. I walked the house with a legal pad, photos of serial numbers, readings from the thermostat, meter snapshots, not because I didn't trust her, but because I now trusted paper more than memory. The room sounded different without her, honest and a little hollow. The courthouse wasn't cinematic, fluorescent lights, a clerk with a ponytail and a pen on a chain. I signed where the tab asked and felt it land, the way a final bolt seats and the frame goes from wobble to solid. My hand shook once, then steadied. I didn't feel triumph. I felt air. On the way out, I drove past St. Mark's again. The fan still squeaked every third turn. I parked, sat, and let both truths sit beside me. I had loved her. She had broken us. Both can be real, and still a man can choose the door that leads forward. I texted my father a simple line. "Filing's done." He replied with 2 words he saved for hard days. Proud, steady. Back home, I set the envelope on a shelf, not as a trophy, but as a record. Then I made coffee, opened the window, and listened to the quiet morning like you listen to a machine after a hard repair, waiting, hoping, ready. Spring came early, and so did the baby. Hospital light is its own kind of daylight, too clean, too awake. I stood by the bassinet, wristband biting my skin, the blue knit cap crooked on a head that didn't look like mine or anyone I knew. Nurses moved with the practiced hush of people who see every kind of story. Emily turned her face to the wall. I didn't argue. I did the thing Patricia drilled into me. As the legal husband, I'm requesting paternity testing. Calm voice, correct form, chain of custody kit on a metal tray, swabs sealed like tiny promises. The charge nurse read the order, nodded once, and walked me through every signature. Clicks of caps, labels with time and date, my initials like small anchors. Emily whispered, "You don't have to do this." I kept my eyes on the paperwork. "I do." The lab courier arrived in a gray jacket, box tucked under his arm. He signed. I signed. The box left the room. Paper had left with it. 3 days later, a thin envelope waited in my mailbox. Lab letterhead, my name spelled right for once. I sat in the truck where bad news has room to breathe and opened it with a calloused thumb. The language was clinical. Probability, allele, exclusion. The sentence that mattered was plain enough for any man. Jake Miller is excluded as the biological father. My breath came out like a lug nut finally giving. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I took a picture of the page, emailed Patricia with the subject line, "Results," and filed the original in the binder between photos and receipts. The presumption on a line in the law had met ink it couldn't argue with. I drove to the courthouse to drop copies, then parked under the same live oak where I'd once eaten a sandwich on my lunch break and believed I knew my future. Sun pushed through leaves. The light didn't feel kinder, just clearer. I wasn't the father. I was free to stop pretending. Freedom isn't revenge, it's room. Over the next 8 months, gravity did what speeches can't. Tyler's second chance promises went the way of his first. Odd jobs, excuses, then silence. The mortgage notice turned red. The back child support woke up and came knocking. I heard about it the way you hear weather, through other people's plans. A buddy on a remodel saw Emily at a discount store, baby strapped to her chest, card declined, eyes red. One night my phone lit with her name. I let it ring, then answered. She cried, said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life, said Tyler wasn't who she thought, said the baby deserved better than a man who disappears when the bill arrives. I listened until the words looped, and then said what I could say without lying. I hope you find steady ground. She asked if I could help for the baby. Older men taught me boundaries are love for both people. I can't, I said. The line went quiet. I sold the Maple Street house in June, watched the for sale sign tilt in the wind and felt nothing break that hadn't already. I moved into a smaller place closer to the plant. One good tree, one honest porch, a lock that clicks like a period. Work became simpler because the noise was gone. I took the promotion to floor manager and used the raise to pay down what needed paying. Nights, I drove to community college and sat in a drafting class with kids who could be my nephews. I learned new software, tightened old habits, brought coffee for the instructor who stayed late. Saturdays I listened to the Rangers with the window open and grilled for my father when he came by. I planted rosemary where roses used to be because it doesn't ask for more than sun and water. Some evenings I'd catch myself waiting for a second plate and then smile at the empty chair. Not lonely, just honest. A man can rebuild if he measures true. Some nights I drive past St. Mark's and Park. I remember the porch light years, the blue dress, the vows that felt heavier than rings. I remember the driveway photographs, the envelope on white linen, the sound a promise makes when it breaks. Love was real. So was the betrayal. And what carried me through wasn't fury. It was paper, patience, and people who kept me steady. Today my house is smaller, quieter, and honest now. I water the rosemary, call my dad, and sleep with the window cracked. I don't wish her harm. I don't wish myself back. I wish for clear mornings and clean ledgers. That's the justice I got. Sometimes the truth is the only justice we get. But it's enough. If you were me, would you forgive, or would you take revenge? Tell me below, and tell me why. Pick a lane. A man has to choose his next step before the light turns green again.